Let us begin with Munetaka Murakami. And the reason I want to bring him up first is because he's a big deal out in Japan. He's got the home run record set in 2022, 56 homers. Yet, if you look online, there are a lot of very smart analysts and writers who think that he might end up being the next Joey Gallo in Major League Baseball with a 9-figure contract. So let's just go right to the good stuff. What do you think about Murakami?
I think if he ends up having a career similar to Joey Gallo, that you'd call that a win. Like a guy who has 3 40-homer seasons in the big leagues would be a pretty good outcome for someone who is swinging and missing as much as Murakami has been. Left-handed power like this is so rare and special, and you can swing and miss a lot. As long as you're getting to your power, you're a productive and, sometimes exceptional big leaguer. But the list of players whose contact metrics are more in lockstep with Murakami's, in the big leagues over the last, however you want to break it up, 5 years, 10 years, you want like a big enough sample of guys who have had, a fairly long career, but they're, quad A type players. Some of the time they're players who, once they start getting expensive, they go to Japan. They're players who, once they hit ARB 4, 5, 6, they maybe get non-tendered. Your Franmil Reyes is, players like that. So, that's what, we're looking at with Murakami, where there's so much swing and miss as you get into the splits, like some of the splits that I would be looking at for players coming over from Korea or Japan, to see how they perform against better velocity, to see how, they do, chase-wise from a play discipline standpoint, or splits against different specific secondary pitch types. It all gets a little worse and worse the further you get away from Murakami's peak couple of seasons, which are now like 3 years in the rear view.
All right, so then that's the one thing I asked. I've seen the stat out there where over 93 or something, he was not good against 93 and above. So how worried should we be about these metrics? Because you're talking about 2 or 3 years ago when he was really great, but his numbers have declined. All the other analytics have declined. So if you're a big league team, why would you put a 9-figure deal on a guy that might hit you 40, but he also might strike out 30 to 40% of the time and not hit you 40 homers?
Yeah, I think, just to cite it specifically, I'll do my Tony Kornheiser now, where I look at my notes so I get it right. But yeah, like between 2023 and 2025, so this is like a multi-year sample, which I wanted to take with Murakami because he's been hurt a bunch for the last 12 months. 2024 ended with injury. He had multiple throughout 2025. It's a 64% contact rate overall. Against fastballs, it's 71% contact rate. 93 and above, a 61% contact rate. And just so, like, for context, if I'm just looking at like the big league leaderboard for the last handful of seasons, comparable players are like Bobby Dahlbeck and Miguel Sano and Luke Raley and Christopher Morel and players who are on the fringe. And I think, if you are a team that has a lot of money such that you can risk it for your biscuit on this is not a guy who I would expect to actually be in like the Mariners market, despite their needs, because they just haven't behaved in a way that would indicate, sure, we can throw $100 million contract at a guy who might swing and miss too much to be good for very long. But the Dodgers might do something like that, or the Yankees might do something like that, or the Red Sox, who I'd argue did like a different version of the same thing with Masataka Yoshida, except where the power piece was just not there and the defense piece was not there. They felt free to do something, greater than what most of the industry thought was kosher. In Murakami's case, like, you have to, the injury piece of it could factor into, your optimism. If he's going to get better, maybe it's just health. And then the other thing is, you have a player development department and you show Munetaka Murakami to that group and maybe come away with some preconceived notions about how you might make this guy better. Now, how much better does he have to be? Like, ultimately, you don't have to go far down this like swing and miss leaderboard basically until you get to Teoscar Hernandez, until you get to Aaron Judge and Shohei Ohtani, who swing and miss a lot. They're just making the quality of their contact when they make contact is so good. And like Murakami's not that type of physical beast like those guys. Teoscar is pretty close in terms of like Murakami's physicality and hits left-handed, but it is like, it's 6 percentage points or so of like worth of contact rate just overall. but it's like a 10% bump for the contact hitter Murakami's been to this point, which is like pretty big. And I don't know how you guys feel about it, Kratzy and AJ, like how much of hitting is really innate and how much of it can be taught. I think there's a difference between learning how to hit and being taught how to hit. And I think some of the learning could just come with reps. There might be a learning curve for anyone coming over from Japan just because of the quality of stuff in the States. But like there might be some swing maintenance that could be done to make this a little bit more viable. And even if, like the hitters I mentioned, Miguel Sano, etc., like there are peak seasons in there that you still feel good about overall. Like if you're a 2-WAR plus player, then you should be making like 20-ish million a year anyway. Like, so I think that he could get to be that, but I think the whole subset of teams is just not going to be in on this guy because of what the price is going to be for the handful of teams who think he's going to hit and maybe think that he can play third base.
I talked to a prominent scout in the game, and he said 2022, the year you were talking about, he said it was elite level. It was elite level. It was high. It was velocity. It was low. It was breaking balls. It was in and out. He was covering everything. So to me, when you bring up somebody like a Joey Gallo, like those types of things, this is somebody who's done it at a high level. So that value should still be there because it's not like he's now on the wrong side of 30. Are teams putting all this out there saying, oh, okay, well, this is why we shouldn't pay for him so that they squash down this Japanese market for a hitter who has power that we haven't seen out of Japan? To me, the ceiling is super high, besides the fact that he might not be able to even play defense in the big leagues. The ceiling is super high. He just hasn't tapped into it the last few years.
Yeah, I think you could argue that. And I think the angle that you're shooting there where it's like, wouldn't team sources want to tell the media things that suppress the player's value? Yeah, and in the same vein, there are agents for these players who are telling members of the media the opposite. Maybe they would consider Tatsuya Imai to be the top pitcher on the market. If you're his agent, I bet you do. You might have a heavier comp on that guy. And if you have a friend who likes to tweet and has a lot of followers and is maybe influential in the industry, then yeah, maybe you would hit the gas pedal a little bit as far as what you think about. There have been Japanese pitchers who have come over in the past where, pretty transparently, people, before I basically got off social media, you could see some of the comps being thrown around were the same clients for the agent of the Japanese player that the writer was comparing him to. It's, there's definitely some of that going on, Kratzy. This is my analysis. It's not my money to spend. It's super easy to say, hey, this guy's got 7 or 8 raw. So just give him whatever. And maybe you teach him not to load so deep. Maybe he won't be underneath so many fastballs if he's a little shorter to the baseball. But that's more of a player development piece rather than a scouting piece. And just from where I'm sitting, there has to be either a rebound like you're talking about or a mechanical change, some positive player development for him to be the sort of player who justifies, an enormous contract. But I still like him as a player. I still have him graded essentially as an average everyday player, not some godlike, 40 homer, he's hitting 250 plus with a 380 OBP. That's not necessarily what I think this guy's going to be. I think it's going to be frustrating. And, the other thing to mention, Eric, is Roki Sasaki at one point was, hey, he's done this before and this is how it looked. And then it trended worse for a couple of years. And I thought to myself, well, we've seen it in there before. Why wouldn't we be able to see it in there again? And then he went to the Dodgers, who are as good at developing players as anyone. And there were real struggles. It wasn't just that putting on that uniform was a panacea for his issues. And so, I sort of have the same point of view as Murakami is concerned.
Kratz pop quiz. What has 35 grams of protein, 6 grams of fiber, 27 essential vitamins and minerals, comes in excellent flavors of course, chocolate, vanilla, but Chocolate peanut butter, my favorite. No added sugar, gluten-free, under $5 per meal, and is ready to drink.
Go out the house, get yourself a Huel. Look at you. You even have one right there. Ready to smack that, John? Chocolate peanut butter, chocolate, and vanilla. Deliciosos.
Also, there is a new daily greens ready to drink, 42 vitamins, minerals, and superfoods. Only 25 calories on that one, 4 grams of fiber. There's flavors like blueberry, apple, peach. Huel makes healthy eating simple. They also just launched into Target stores nationwide. Try both products today with 15% off your purchase for new customers with the code FOUL at huel.com/FOUL. Use that code FOUL and fill out the post-checkout survey to help support FT. How much does age factor into the entire value of what we're talking about here? We almost never have young free agents for baseball terms. Front offices live and die off of projection models and age curves. Some of this does have to do with the fact that, yes, it's a lottery ticket, but he's 25 years old. You can get better at 25 years old, and you also can't find 25-year-old position players with high upside on the market. So curious for your take there, and if you can mix in, too, the part you said about mechanics. We've seen many guys adjust mechanically, whether they're here at that age or from overseas. Again, I don't know. I'm just presenting the other side here where we had like our pre-production call and Kratz was like, they said this about Seiya Suzuki. Then he came over and he's been a pretty good player in the big leagues.
Good. Yeah, I agree with that. I think that there's a difference between the evaluation and the valuation. And his age is a positive variable impacting the way you value that guy. But the swing and miss stuff is still there. And 25 is 25. It's not 30. And I agree that it's better for him to be 25 than for him to be 29. Murakami's like maxed out. Like he's 25, but he's not really projectable in the way that some guys are physically projectable deep into their 20s and maybe even beyond. This is like a stout, physically dense, like maxed out guy where I don't necessarily see there being the sort of like projection I was taught to include in my report, like when I'm assessing someone's peak in the future. Doesn't really exist with this guy visually and athletically. It only exists in his age as just a number. So that is where a little bit of like my tepid enthusiasm for that sort of comes in. But yeah, I think he's a good player, just not like, there will have to be changes, I think, if he's going to be an absolute beast.
I want to know, am I going to the Dodgers? Am I going to the Dodgers or are you going to the Dodgers? But what's his projection? Can he be a top-end starter? Like Shota came in his first year, was a huge deal. Or you have Roki, who didn't really do much till the postseason. Where does Imai stand on that?
Yeah, he's really interesting. I think some of what you guys alluded to before I hopped on, where you mentioned that his strike throwing has improved year over year for like the last 3-4 years. And that's true. But I think some of what was at play with Roki is definitely at play with Imai too, where when you throw as hard as these guys do in Japan, they just chase it more often. And I think some of your strike throwing looks a little bit better because you're gifted chase. And I think there's some of that going on for Imai, but I really love him. Like the durability piece of this, they really let these guys, obviously like the week-to-week schedule is different for Japanese starters than big league starters. But the durability piece here, this guy was like sitting in the mid-90s comfortably at the very end of the season. His fastball has real ride. His slider's excellent. He's really athletic. Like this is a really loose, whippy armed guy. He's deceptive because of the arm speed piece. He does not show hitters the ball until late. You see him laying back and he's parallel with the ground. So as an athlete, I really like him. His stuff is great. He just sure looks like a starter to me, athletically and from a stuff standpoint. And I do think that the command piece of it is more fine than good. Like definitely, three grades basically behind where I had Yamamoto when he was coming over, where Yamamoto was just like, like I had peak Greinke comps on Yamamoto basically coming over. Imai, I think, is going to be a good team's like third starter. Like he does strike me as the type of guy who can take the ball as a starter in a playoff series. That's how good he is. Where the durability piece and the stuff and the athleticism check, those boxes pretty emphatically. And then we'll see. I think there's maybe some room for improvement for him delivery wise. I don't know if you guys have seen video of him. Like, he's pretty short striding guy. I think he's more athletic than that, and could like maybe stand to get down the mound a little bit more even. And there might even be like some positive improvements for him, I think, once he comes over here, depending on the org. But yeah, I think he's quite good and is going to get a big deal. Ben Clemens, who does our top 50 free agents over at FanGraphs, has him stuffed pretty good. And I advised on that and more or less agree with where Ben's got him. Yeah, Tatsuya Imai, good pitcher.